The vision of one woman, Martha Scott Hand, in 1894 for a Kansas Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, came into fruition with the organization of the first chapter in the state, the Topeka chapter, on April 2nd, 1896, with Mrs. Hand as the first state regent. The Kansas Society began to grow under Mrs. Hand's guidance with the addition of the Betty Washington and Eunice Sterling chapters later in 1896. The organizing chapter regent of the Eunice Sterling chapter, Catherine Sterling Lewis, served as KSDAR's second state regent and organized the first state conference in Topeka on December 5th, 1899. Mrs. Lewis challenged the chapters to appoint a committee to fundraise for a marker to be placed on the site of the Pawnee Village in Republic County, where the American flag was unfurled for the first time on Kansas soil, September 29th, 1806, by Zebulon Pike. Lucy Brown Johnston was the third state regent, and at the third state conference, she suggested the need for additional state officers, notably a secretary. Just a few months later, she resigned to become the president of the State Federation of Women's Clubs. At the fourth state conference in Ottawa on November 5th, 1902, KSDAR's fourth state regent, Mrs. Fanny Geiger Thompson, in an address never to be forgotten, proposed that Kansas daughters mark the Santa Fe Trail through Kansas. Also at this conference, the members discussed the rights of Kansas women and suffrage. Kansas daughters have always been pioneers. Emma Lenora Hills Stanley was the fifth state regent, but the first Kansas daughter to serve on a national level, as she was elected Vice President General. She was the third regent of Eunice Sterling chapter, and under her guidance, several new chapters came into existence. Newton, Hannah Jameson, Sterling, Esther Lowry, Captain Jesse Leavenworth, Atchison, Christiana Musser, Uvedale, and Betty Bonney. The first set of state officers were elected, and state bylaws were developed. Her most notable project as state regent was the completion of the marking of the Santa Fe Trail. In 1907, the trail was marked through 500 miles of Kansas with 96 granite markers at a cost of $1,546.29. The red granite stones were selected so that they would last forever. Once Kansas daughters began marking the Santa Fe Trail, the other states along the trail joined in, and now the trail is marked from beginning to end. Crimson sunrise in the fiery east, buffalo grass laden with dew. A Kansas sky breaks open like an ocean tide of blue. Covered wagons in a circle, flighty mule steps out of line. Spokes wheels are rolling early, they have to make good time. White canvas tops the wagons, it's a prairie schooner sail. Pioneers make their weary way across the Santa Fe Trail. Santa Fe Trail for paradise waits at the Santa Fe Trail. It's like riding through heaven and living through hell. Ruth Emma Johns was the 6th state regent for the Kansas Society. A few months after her election, she resigned due to ill health. She had the unique distinction of serving her first 4 years of membership in DAR as organizing regent, chapter regent, and state regent. When Ruth Johns resigned as state regent in early 1909, the vice regent was unable to serve, and the regent-elect Sarah Guernsey was out of the country. The National Board appointed Grace Ruth Meeker as the 7th state regent. She only served as state regent for a few months. Sarah Mitchell Guernsey, the 8th and 10th Kansas state regent, exemplified the strong Kansas woman who was ambitious as well as innovative. During her first term, she organized 15 chapters. She was the first state regent to appoint committees that mirrored those of NSDAR. In 1917, she was elected President General, the first elected west of the Mississippi. Approximately 60 Kansas daughters attended the 1917 Continental Congress to support Mrs. Guernsey. The state society only had approximately 1,700 members at that time. Resilient women rose to the challenge, dedicating themselves to war relief activities that stretched from their living rooms to the battlefields of France, rendering service to their country worthy of their patriot ancestors. The DAR's 26th Continental Congress commenced only 10 days after war was declared. A natural-born leader, Mrs. Guernsey formed the War Relief Service Committee during her first week in office. Funds were also raised to help restore the village of Tilleloy, France, which included a water system built with $130,000 raised by the DAR. In addition, DAR encouraged the adoption of French war orphans. Another effort was a campaign to address the poultry shortage in France. The effort was to re-chickenize France, and members collected dimes and quarters for the cause, and in return, donors received a pin that said, "I have a chicken in France." During her administration, Kansas daughters gave cash gifts of $39,616 for various World War I causes. In addition, the Red Cross received over $40,000. Kansas daughters purchased over $300,000 worth of Liberty loans and sold almost $600,000 of Liberty loans. The industrious Kansas members made approximately 15,000 hospital garments and 2,907,291 surgical supplies. No state made a better showing than Kansas. At the 1919 Continental Congress, it was said that the Congress adjourned in absolute harmony and was considered the first held without some friction. She left an indelible mark on the National Society. During Mrs. Guernsey's second term as state regent, 4 new chapters were organized. In 1938, Kansas daughters and other friends gave NSDAR a Hammond organ in honor of Mrs. Guernsey. She died February 28, 1939, and at the memorial service at Continental Congress that year, Mrs. George Maynard Minor spoke about Mrs. Guernsey, saying, "Her staunch character, her devotion to duty, her unswerving loyalty to our organization, her insistence on adhering to our bylaws and living within our means will ever be remembered as outstanding characteristics of her administration. Strong, vigorous, patriotic, devoted to the right, the memory of Sarah Elizabeth Guernsey will ever remain in the minds and hearts of our members, a living monument to her life and accomplishments." The Kansas Society placed a bronze DAR insignia grave marker and a plaque inscribed President General 1917 to 1920 on her crypt on March 8, 1940. Katherine Campbell was the 9th state regent from the General Edward Hand chapter. During her term, she obtained permission from the National Board for the Kansas Society to incorporate under the laws of the state of Kansas, which was a necessary procedure to hold property. Olive Campbell was elected as the 11th state regent. Mrs. Campbell was a member of the Eunice Sterling chapter. An incredible 11 chapters were organized and 700 new members joined during her 3 terms. One of her greatest accomplishments was the erection of a marker at the El Cordeleo site that was paid for by the Kansas Society and chapters. KSDAR received the site in 1921 and wanted to ensure that it was maintained to educate future generations. She also served on the committee to select the site for the Madonna of the Trail monument erected by the NSDAR. She was one of the honored guests in 1928 at the dedication ceremonies in Council Grove.
Tracks cut in the sod grass, like ribbons side by side. This unmapped road to freedom and a land of newfound pride. Destination Fort Dodge, next stop on the rough path. Then on to Cimarron River, rest the horses, take a bath. Santa Fe Trail, Santa Fe Trail. It's like riding through heaven and living through hell.
Kirkpatrick's 4 years in office. She visited all 45 chapters across the state. As the 12th state regent, 4 new chapters were organized. She selected the 2 rooms at the Shawnee Indian Mission in Fairway, Kansas, that the Kansas Society would furnish. She suggested that the Kansas Society should have a state genealogy library. She served as a vice president general from 1933 to 1936 and had stated that a cherished dream came true in 1956 when she was elected an honorary vice president general at Continental Congress. Genevieve Lingard Pendleton, the 13th state regent, was an outstanding public speaker and made many public radio addresses. She took great pride in working to furnish the rooms at the Shawnee Indian Mission. She died suddenly in 1934, and the Kansas Society presented a sterling silver tea service in her memory to the Shawnee Mission at the Constitution Day pilgrimage in 1935. When the Shawnee Indian Mission had to close several buildings for repair, the Pendleton family purchased the tea service at its appraised value and then donated the funds to establish the Genevieve Pendleton Memorial Endowment Scholarship. Leda Farrel Rex served as the 14th state regent, and 5 new chapters were organized between 1935 and 1937. She originated the Kansas State DAR Bulletin that was published every quarter and mailed to every KSDAR member. Under her guidance, the Kansas State Children of the American Revolution was organized. In 1938, she was elected chaplain general and was further elected first vice president general. She brought great honor to the Kansas Society. As the 15th state regent, Marion Eleanor Seeley focused on increasing membership as the Depression had shrunk the number of Kansas daughters. She was able to organize 2 new chapters and increase the membership. She was able to dedicate the Kansas Bell at Valley Forge, as well as the DAR marker placed on Mrs. Guernsey's crypt. It was under her direction that the first review of the Santa Fe Trail markers be conducted and that a map of their location be prepared. She served NSDAR as the Vice President General from 1940 to 1943. Her family home, the Seeley Mansion, is open to the public for viewing. Ruth Norrisberger was the 16th state regent, focused on increasing membership, so much so that she personally typed 68 application papers for prospective members. 4 new chapters were organized and 769 members were admitted during her administration. A bronze Santa Fe Trail marker was placed on Pawnee Rock, and 12 Santa Fe markers were repaired or restored. As her term was during the Second World War, many of her accomplishments surrounded the war efforts. Members provided $9,108 for a mobile blood plasma unit, and 12 daughters served in the armed forces. Kansas daughters devoted 315,574 hours to the Red Cross and made 35,182 garments and 2,186 buddy bags. Kansas members and their families invested over $1,207,072 in war bonds and stamps. They also furnished a recreation room at Fort Riley, a sunroom at Winter General Hospital, and many other items for the various military camps across the state. She was elected Vice President General in 1944. Dorothy Berryman Schroeder, the 17th State Regent, began her DAR membership as a member of the Topeka chapter, then organized the Fort Supply Trail chapter in Ashland, Kansas. Due to the war, Continental Congress and the State Conference were canceled in 1945. 2 ships, the 588 and the 646, were adopted by the Kansas Society. Letters, books, and food were sent to the crews. KSDAR made sure that each man received a box at Christmas. The flag that had flown over ship 588 during the invasion of southern France was sent to Mrs. Berryman with the appreciation of all the men aboard for the many kindnesses shown them. In 1945, 20 Kansas daughters had served or were serving in the armed forces. Because of the travel restrictions, she printed a monthly bulletin that she paid the costs for and mailed to members across the state. During her 4 years in office, 2 chapters were organized, and the Kansas room at NSDAR was redecorated, as well as the DAR rooms at the Shawnee Indian Mission. Under Mary Govier Ainsworth Kennedy's leadership as the 18th State Regent, Kansas was applauded for the greatest gain in junior membership out of all the states. 4 chapters were also organized during her tenure. During her 2-year term, Kansas daughters each contributed $5.50 to the construction of the DAR Administration Building. In 1950, Kansas was assigned a room on the 3rd floor of the administration building that became the Kansas Chapel. She served not only as state regent, but also Vice President General and Registrar General, as well as state president of the Children of the American Revolution. Nellie Morgan Vonderheiden was the 19th State Regent and the first to serve a 3-year term. Her administration's focus was to complete KSDAR's portion of the funds for the DAR Administration's building and the Valley Forge Bell Tower Fund. Upkeep of the Santa Fe Trail markers was also continued. Marie Robinson Abels, the 20th State Regent, was a real granddaughter. Her grandfather was at the Battle of Yorktown. She was an accomplished public speaker and established the Speakers Bureau. 2 chapters were organized, and the Kansas DAR Chorus made its debut during her administration. Her most important project was the raising of funds for the 16-foot-tall polished granite pylons and bronze plaques located at the Eisenhower Museum and Library in Abilene. Kansas daughters raised nearly $17,000 for this project. Maud Haver Davis, the 21st State Regent, completed the work on the granite pylons at the Eisenhower Museum in 1956. Other accomplishments of the Davis administration include the design and printing of 25,000 copies of a historical map of Kansas for the state's centennial, An agreement with the Scott County Historical Society for El Cordeleo Pueblo was completed. A marble marker was placed at El Cordeleo, and 2 chapters were organized. Roberta Cook Kilbourne served as the 22nd state regent. 1 chapter was organized, and the high point of her administration was the decoration and furnishing of the Kansas Chapel in the administration building at NSDAR headquarters at a cost of $8,300, which Kansas Daughters provided. Miss Pauline Calgar was the 23rd KSDAR state regent and the first to have a formal theme for her administration, Hold High the Torch. She instituted a Vesper meditation hour held from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. each afternoon in the Kansas Chapel, providing a prayer for peace for each visitor to the chapel during Continental Congress. 1 chapter was organized, and the first KSDAR Outstanding Junior Member was selected and given the Calgar Crown, a jeweled tiara which was worn by succeeding Outstanding Junior Members. The high point of her administration was the designation of the El Cordeleo site as a registered National Historic Landmark. Mildred Sweeney Huffman was the 24th state regent. She had the honor of participating in the NSDAR 75th anniversary and had the distinction of being the first state regent to wear the diamond insignia that was passed to each successive state regent. In 1968, the sunflower windows were dedicated in the Kansas Chapel. The windows were salvaged from the Wichita Carnegie Library. At the ceremony, Mildred said, "The design and color of the windows carry the message of the strength and faith of the Kansas people, the gold of our sun, the blue of our sky, and the green of our fields." 1 new chapter was organized during her administration, while 2 disbanded. Mary Carswell Lempino, the 25th state regent, has a continued impact on the Kansas society. She increased the Kansas chapters on the NSDAR honor roll from 54% to 90%. In wanting to improve KSDAR finances, she raised state dues by 35 cents to $1.60. That, in addition to other financial decisions, improved the coffers of the society. She used the remaining monies in the Eisenhower Fund to create the Lempino Friendship Fund to pay final state and national dues for aged and indigent members no longer able to keep up their memberships. A highlight of her administration was the designation of the Shawnee Indian Mission as a National Historic Landmark. Mary had a sense of humor. In 1968, while trying to get chapter regents to recruit more juniors as pages, she stressed that the chapter regents tell the juniors no miniskirts on the floors of the meetings. When Esther Dorgan Casey took office as the 26th state regent in 1971, she made it a goal to focus on junior membership. A highlight of her administration was a refurbishment of the 2 DAR rooms at the Shawnee Indian Mission. The El Cordeleo excavations were completed and many artifacts were recovered. Lucille Albright Johnson, the 27th state regent, had the goal to build a better image of DAR in Kansas. A highlight of her administration was the bicentennial project of researching and retracing the Black Dog Trail in southeastern Kansas. This is a 250-mile-long Indian trail from Baxter Springs to Oxford. It was the first marking of a trail honoring the American Indian. There were dedications of markers at Oxford, Winfield, Dexter, Chautauqua, Coffeyville, and Caney. The markers were placed in towns along the favorite campsites of Chief Black Dog. Isabel Dodmaguire served KSDAR as the 28th state regent. She was the first KSDAR state regent to appoint VA DAR representatives and deputy representatives at the VA facilities in Kansas. She organized genealogy workshops across the state to promote DAR membership. She held a rededication of the Madonna of the Trail in Council Grove in honor of its 50th anniversary. One of her goals was to leave KSDAR in a better financial condition, which she accomplished. Constance Routh Decker was the 29th KSDAR state regent. She was the third generation in her family to become a member of the DAR. She had a focus of improving membership, and during her 3 years as state regent, 842 members were added. The Sunflower Singers, the KSDAR chorus, made their debut during her administration. She created an endowment fund for the KSDAR library in Dodge City, and 3 chapters were organized. Katherine Cahot Compton, the 30th state regent, focused on membership. During her administration, KSDAR grew to 4,000 members for the first time, and she worked to increase the library endowment fund. She led Kansas Daughters in the support of the restoration of the Statue of Liberty, raising $8,339. The 31st state regent, Sally Schmidt Ryden, increased the KSDAR library endowment and worked to increase membership. She focused on strengthening chapters that were struggling, and she visited all 63 chapters. A total of 23 advertising pages in the Daughters newsletter were purchased during her term. Betty Wynne McGehee served as the 32nd state regent. She also worked to increase the value of the KSDAR Library Endowment Fund. She purchased several computers for several of the state officers, and the treasurer documents were computerized. 3 chapters were organized, and the Nathan Edson and Concordia chapters merged. The 1990 pilgrimage to the Eisenhower Center in Abilene was a triple celebration for Constitution Day, NSDAR Centennial, and the Eisenhower Centennial. 3 ginkgo trees were placed and dedicated. The first tree was in commemoration of the 100th birthday anniversary of President Eisenhower, the first president to sign the DAR Constitution Week proclamation. The second tree was in honor of the NSDAR Centennial, and the third tree in honor of the 31 state regents of the Kansas Society. Ruth Keyes Clark served KSDAR as the 33rd state regent. Her emphasis was on historic preservation and the renovation of the Santa Fe Trail markers. The Madonna of the Trail statue in Council Grove was glazed to prevent further deterioration. The KSDAR library was moved to the Village Square Mall in Dodge City, and she raised $3,200 for the library. She led 9 genealogical workshops across the state to increase membership. The Kansas Juniors received a national award for their joke book, A Bouquet of Smiles. Patricia Dorsch Traffus, the 34th state regent, served during the Kansas Society's centennial. Her passion, then and now, surrounds the historic trails that crossed Kansas. Her administration honored the 175th anniversary of the Santa Fe Trail, Santa Fe Trail Association stewardship of the trail and the DAR markers, and 90th anniversary of the Kansas DAR marking the trail. Pat and the state historian traveled the Santa Fe Trail to survey and photograph firsthand condition and locations of the markers. Fortunately, neither were arrested or shot for trespassing. The Centennial Chapter 3 Trails West was organized. Looking Back, Trails to the Second Century, Centennial History book was researched and published. Kansas DAR was the first state society to commemorate the Lewis and Clark Corps of Discovery bicentennial. The story of marking the Santa Fe Trail by Mrs. T.A. Cordry was reprinted with an addendum of the 1996 locations of the markers using the 911 designations. A marker preservation restoration fund was established, and over $3,000 was contributed in 1996. Alice Fraser Walker, the 35th state regent, and her Reading Doorway to Opportunity administration increased the principal of KSDAR scholarship by $4,000. Alice was a librarian, so it was natural for her to focus on the KSDAR library. The junior club became official after 10 years in existence, and the Cameo Generations officially organized. She began the after-conference banquet sing-alongs that brought the Kansas daughters together for laughter and song. In 2000, the Kansas Society was first in the nation in the NSDAR Literacy Challenge. Patricia Eddy Carpenter served as the 36th Kansas State Regent. During her administration, the state celebrated the 75th anniversary of the Madonna of the Trail and rededicated the Lewis and Clark marker in Atchison and the Kansas Chapel in Washington, D.C. Pat initiated web hosting for the KSDAR website and established an endowment for the maintenance of the Madonna of the Trail. Her genealogy expertise was utilized in 20 member promotion workshops and 29 member roadshows. Pat initiated one-day fall workshops, which replaced the traditional fall tour the last 2 years of her administration. This change was well received by Kansas daughters. The State Regents Project was the endowment of a scholarship for the State Good Citizen winner. Over $5,000 was donated to the project. Sammy King Cope was the 37th State Regent, and her administration focused on the El Cordeleo project. She educated the membership and others about the Indian migration to Kansas and raised funds for the preservation of the site and a future interpretive center. Under her leadership, 100% of Kansas chapters had websites, and the state had both a public and a private website. Shirley Cappel served the society as its 38th state regent. As an avid researcher and writer, she has left an indelible mark on KSDAR through her work on the KSDAR Centennial History book, Looking Back, Trails to the Second Century, compiled and edited the addendum and errata to the reproduction of Mrs. T.A. Cordry's The Marking of the Santa Fe Trail, as well as many other publications. Her administration developed an electronic master questionnaire that was adopted by NSDAR. Her key project as state regent was the restoration of the century-old DAR Santa Fe Trail markers.
Destination Fort Dodge, next stop on the rough path, then on to Cimarron River, rest the horses, take a bath. Santa Fe Trail, Santa Fe Trail, it's like riding through heaven and living through hell.
Mary Frisch was the 39th state regent. The Kansas Society purchased a wheat nativity made by Kansas artist Donna Morgenstern of Abilene, Kansas. KSDAR entered into a real estate donation agreement with Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism for the transfer of El Cordeleo, as well as $17,000 of the KSDAR El Cordeleo CD. a Page Patron Fund was established, raising more than $4,000 during the Celebrate Freedom administration to support junior members paging at state conference and Continental Congress. Colonel R. Gary LaGrange, U.S. Army, awarded the Kansas Society the Golden Pencil Award for donating thousands of dollars worth of backpacks, school supplies, and money for the Help Us Learn, Give Us Hope program in Iraq and Afghanistan. Donations from the Kansas State Society and Kansas Daughters for the emergency work on the NSDAR library ley lights totaled over $19,000. Brenda Judd Dooley, 40th State Regent, had two main projects during her administration: replacing the strip lights in the NSDAR library with LED lights, and the development of the Judd Smith Brooks Scholarship for high school senior males who descend through a proven DAR lineage. She oversaw renovations to the Kansas Chapel, including the repair and upgrade of the chandelier. KSDAR's 41st State Regent, Catherine Walker West, successfully undertook many large projects during her 3-year term. The Madonna of the Trail underwent a major recleaning and preservation, and the DAR insignia was installed on the base of the statue. Several projects were undertaken at Kansas VA hospitals, one of which was the manufacturing of a motorized side-by-side bicycle for the Topeka facility. Due to renovations at NSDAR, the door to the Kansas Chapel was moved, which instigated changes to the chapel space. The chapel space was flipped 180 degrees. A stained glass window depiction of George Washington in prayer at Valley Forge and new walnut tables were crafted by Kansas artisans, and a photo of Mrs. Guernsey was placed in the new entryway. Susan Metzger is currently serving KSDAR as the 42nd State Regent during the Society's 125th anniversary. Her theme, Welcome Home, is focused on active duty military, veterans, and making KSDAR a welcoming home for its members. She has provided 5 grants to organizations that support veterans. Susan is leading the Kansas Society through the COVID pandemic with a sure hand and technical expertise, as 2 state meetings were held virtually and the 2020 state conference had to be canceled. Through Zoom meetings, social media, email, and phone calls, the administration has stayed in contact with chapters and individual daughters. She appointed a committee to review the scholarships and appointed a committee to develop plans for the 125th celebration. Projects during the celebration include placing the DAR insignia on Maybe Eisenhower's grave, performing a service project at the Nicodemus Historic Site, addendum to the 2 state history books, Haskell University Service Project, this 125th history video, and the Kansas Box Turtle Project. 2 other accomplishments include the placing of an America 250 signage. We're going to do this whole thing again. America 2. Susan Metzger is currently serving KSDAR as the 42nd State Regent during the Society's 125th anniversary. Her theme, Welcome Home, is focused on active duty military, veterans, and making KSDAR a welcoming home for its members. She has provided 5 grants to organizations that support veterans. Susan is leading the Kansas Society through the COVID pandemic with a sure hand and technical expertise, as 2 state meetings were held virtually and the 2020 state conference had to be canceled. Through Zoom meetings, social media, email, and phone calls, the administration has stayed in contact with chapters and individual daughters. She appointed a committee to review the scholarships and appointed a committee to develop plans for the 125th celebration. Projects during the celebration include placing the DAR insignia on Mamie Eisenhower's grave, performing a service project at the Nicodemus Historic Site, addendum to the 2 state history books, Haskell University Service Project, this 125th history video, and the Kansas Box Turtle Project. 2 other accomplishments include the placing of an America 250 signage in El Dorado, Kansas, and the beginning of the Eisenhower Pylon restoration.
Okay, stop. I need to change that last slide there. Okay, let me check real quick to make sure that works.
Okay, and I have a question about the script.
Okay, it works. Okay,
And my question about the script on the last slide.
yeah.
I wonder if you would add the word, the Kansas Society is on sure footing due to the leadership of the 42 state regions that have led her. Is that how you would refer to the Kansas Society? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I had to think on that one.
Yeah. Okay.
Go.
The Kansas Society is on sure footing due to the leadership of the 42 state regions that have led her through world wars, the Great Depression, and pandemics. Kansas daughters have taken the lead on many projects, showing that they are strong, imaginative women who support God, home, and country. At this celebration of the 125 years of our beloved society, we look back on all the accomplishments of those that came before us as we continue our service into the future in support of historic preservation, education, and patriotism.
Santa Fe Trail. It's like riding through heaven and living through hell. Red buffalo in their wallows, watch the wagons passing through, swarming in like cicadas, settlers and their families too. They came from distant lands, many days were filled with strife, hardship was their fortune on their way to this new life. Santa Fe Trail, Santa Fe Trail. It's like riding through heaven and living through hell. Santa Fe Trail, Santa Fe Trail. It's like riding through heaven and living through hell.
The Kansas Society is on sure footing due to the leadership of the 42 state regents that have led her through world wars, the Great Depression, and pandemics. Kansas daughters have taken the lead on many projects, showing that they are strong, imaginative women who support God, home, and country. At this celebration of the 125 years of our beloved society, we look back on all the accomplishments of those that came before us as we continue our service into the future in support of historic preservation, education, and patriotism.
Santa Fe Trail. It's like riding through heaven and living through hell. Red buffalo in their wallows, watch the wagons passing through, swarming in like cicadas, settlers and their families too. They came from distant lands, many days were filled with strife. Hardship was their fortune on their way to this new life. Santa Fe Trail, Santa Fe Trail. It's like riding through heaven and living through hell. Santa Fe Trail, Santa